Your ass better call somebody!
The energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, reppin' both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire, misunderstood. Hear 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline greens, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. Rob hype on the mic, CP's the fire spark. Together they ignite, voices like the park. Fans drift in jerseys, legacy bold. The Metropolitan story forever told. Turnstile spinning, the crowd floods the gates. This is family, no time for debates. Crack of the Batman, the roar never fades. Queens in the blood, it's how champions are made. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline gleams, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. 7-line swagger, vibes electric and wild. Mets legacy golden since I was a child. Orange crushed skies, let the battle ignite. Ride for the home team till the last fight.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the Amazing Mets pregame show here on this lovely Wednesday morning as the Mets are trying to go for the sweep in Detroit ahead of tomorrow's off day and before a very pivotal stretch against teams that the Mets are competing against for a playoff spot, being the Reds, the Phillies, and on it goes. I know that it's very early. I'm sure a lot of people are working, doing whatever they got to do to prepare for this Mets game. But please, if you are here or if you're watching the replay, smash those thumbs up buttons on this stream. Subscribe to the channel for more Mets pregame and postgame shows. We are doing a postgame with Rob and myself after this matinee game on this lovely Wednesday. So make sure to tune into that to get all of the recap and reactions surrounding the state of the New York Mets and this game and the action that we're going to see. So, it's something where you go and have an off day for the first time in a while. And there have been a lot of series this season where the Mets could have gotten a sweep and they let the last game go. Most recently and most notably was against Atlanta Braves in Atlanta. And how about we not have that happen this time? How about we go out there and close the door on a very important and crucial opening series of this road trip that the Mets are embarking on. And we're talking about the lineup here. We're talking about the pitching matchup. It's Clay Holmes versus Casey Mize. It feels weird. It's a weird series because 2 matinee games of the 3 in this series is something that we're not used to at this point, right? Poor Rob can't join me on this pregame stream. He's still stuck at work, but he did set up the postgame stream, and we'll be doing that a little bit later. But it is what it is at this point. We got a lot to talk about, and not only as it pertains to this game, because the pitching matchup is interesting within itself, especially from a Tigers perspective. And we were talking about this on the postgame show last night about how many similar parallels there are to both of these pitching rotation staffs and the overuse of each bullpen. And we're kind of seeing that from the Detroit Tigers perspective. And we've been seeing that for so long already with the New York Mets. We do have some updated reports and rumors surrounding this Mets rotation as it pertains to, what they might do in the next go around. And we have the latest report coming. I posted a short on my channel late last night, and that's coming directly from Will Salmon of The Athletic as well. And it's a little bit of a spoiler alert because the live chat poll over on YouTube, if you're watching over on X, come over to the YouTube and obviously make sure to subscribe. But is basically surrounding Kodai Senga and what the Mets are going to do with him. But before we talk about Kodai Senga and the rest of this game, I want to make sure to shout out everybody in the chat, Metsflix, D, Nate, and Brad. I definitely appreciate you all being here today. Bring the brooms out is what Nate is saying. Nate78, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for being here. Bring the brooms out. Sweep. Get the job done. Same thing with what Brad is saying here. Sweep time and go into Cincy ready to roll. I like that idea. Shout out to you, D, as well, for being here, saying shout out CP. If you guys don't subscribe and follow Metsflix as well as Pure Adrenaline Sports, really good in-game live streams. I think Metsflix will be going live for the game as well, starting at 1 o'clock in this matinee action. Make sure to go subscribe over to Metsflix over on YouTube and, give them some support as well. I would definitely appreciate that. And keep dropping those live chat comments before we fully get into the content in this stream. Means the world to me. Follow me over on social media as well. All right. So let's just talk about and let's just, get into the most interesting stuff first before we fully preview this game. Yesterday was an electric win, 12-5. The Bats showed out. Nolan McLean had a great performance in his fourth career MLB start. But conversely, in the first game of this series, we saw Sean Manaea kind of falter. And it's been kind of a trend between Manaea and Senga, and we've had a little bit of inconsistencies here in between as well from Peterson and Clay Holmes. So late last night, Will Salmon decided to drop a report in what is and could be the future outlook of Kodai Senga in this rotation. Now, a lot of Mets fans, and we've all been speculating on all these shows about what the game plan is moving forward with Manaea and Senga in the rotation. Will they be going to the bullpen? Will one of them be on the IL, if not both of them? Are they bringing up Brandon Sproat? Are they going to bring up an impactful arm, a young arm, just like they did with Jonah Tong and Nolan McLean? Well, it seems like that they are not, and they are still waiting on that Brandon Sproat call up, which, as annoying as it is, that's a decision that they're consciously making. So yesterday in the pregame with Rob and myself, we were talking about them potentially bringing up Brandon Sproat for the Cincinnati series. Doesn't seem like they're willing to do that, and it doesn't seem like they're going to do that. But what's interesting in this Will Salmon article, basically stating that all options are on the table for the Mets as it pertains to Kodai Senga. And this is, we all know this. You got to do something with Kodai Senga. He said it himself in the post game. He looks defeated. He hasn't had one of these stretches, bad stretches, in the entirety of his career so far, right? Whether it was in a different league or the MLB, whatever. He hasn't been this bad for this long, and it's getting to him. And he was mentioning kind of sort of the biomechanics of throwing a ball and how some of his body parts just don't feel like, they're fully up to speed and they're kind of lagging a little bit. Whatever. If it's an excuse, I don't know. Maybe he actually doesn't physically feel right ever since coming off the IL. But the Mets are trying to make things work here. And there's one obstacle that's in their way. And that is the contract clause that Kodai Senga has associated with his deal that he signed back in 2023 when he first entered the league. And David Stearns, it's not his fault. He had nothing to do with the Kodai Senga signing whatsoever. He had nothing to do with the clause that was put into this contract, but unfortunately, it's his problem to deal with right now. And Will Sam is basically stating that the Mets do want to send Kodai Senga down. That's one of the options for them to go and have happen. But what's in their way is because Kodai Senga is, we forget that he was a rookie at 30 plus years old back in 2023. He missed the majority of 2024, and now he's in year 3 of his contract right now. He will be here in 2026, but, he's got 3 options remaining. It was just a couple of years ago that he was a rookie. So he's got options associated with the contract, but the specific clause that was put in, maybe it was a pride type of thing. I don't know exactly what it was, right? This guy's coming over. He doesn't want to get sent down and hurt his ego, hurt his pride, whatever. But he needs to grant the Mets permission, essentially, to have him sent down to the minor leagues and get things right. And right now, that is the best option for Kodai Senga to exit this team, exit the active roster, go down and face some lesser competition to really work on his mechanics and not have the end results mean all that much, right? Because if he goes down and he stinks, yeah, people are going to probably start talking about it and keep talking about it. But guess what? Those results down there don't really matter, and they're not hurting the New York Mets. And I'd rather him go down there and struggle down there while trying to figure some stuff out than try to figure stuff out here while taking an active roster spot. And I hope that Kodai Senga, it seems like he's a really good guy, team player. I really do believe that about Kodai Senga. I hope that this isn't a scenario where Kodai Senga is stubborn and isn't willing to do what's best for the team, plain and simple. That's the best way that I can put it. So the Mets have already committed to their rotation over the next 5 days. And the most interesting thing to me while they were doing that is that you just had Nolan McLean go yesterday, right? He gave you 6 innings pitched, 90 pitches of 2 earned run baseball, and he earned the win. He's 4-0 in his career so far. The Mets, over the next couple of games, outside of the off day tomorrow, are going with this lineup with the rotation, right? Clay Holmes is getting the ball in this game. We'll talk about Clay Holmes here in just a second. Off day tomorrow. Believe Jonah Tong is going on Friday for the New York Mets. David Peterson is getting the ball on Saturday. And Nolan McLean on essentially 4 days rest. I guess you could say it's 5 days, but I'm not counting the off day. On 4 days rest is getting the ball on Sunday in that last game in Cincinnati. And that could be for 2 reasons, right? One reason is that we talked about it. You want to line up your best pitchers to try to bury the team that is chasing you in the wild card in the Cincinnati Reds. So that makes all the sense in the world. You have pretty much your best 3 pitchers at this given moment with the current outlook in that series with Tong, Peterson, who needs to figure it out. His second half has been a little bit shaky, a little bit inconsistent, but we still have trust and belief. I would hope, I do, in David Peterson. And then Nolan McLean, who's been basically the ace of this rotation over the past 4 starts, is getting pushed up and getting one less day of rest to get him in that series. And the other thing is that with moving Nolan McLean up, Sean Manaea is getting the ball on Monday in Philly in game 1 of that series. And, Sean Manaea didn't do bad against the Phillies the last go around. He only went 4 2/3 and he lost, some steam in that 5th inning. We all know that. That's been a common trend for him. But they want to get him that extra day of rest. So it would be a week between Manaea starts because he went game 1 of this Tigers series on Monday. We won't see him again until next Monday, the following Monday in Philadelphia. So really trying to prioritize Sean Manaea, who's dealing with the loose bodies in his elbow, who's dealing with the fatigue, right? Of, maybe it's the loose bodies, maybe the mechanics, whatever you want to attribute it to. I don't think anybody knows what we can attribute it to fully. I think a lot of people are speculating that it's the arm angle that he was utilizing for the majority of last season, in a season where he threw like bulk innings for the first time in a long time in his career. And a lot of people were speculating. I think Rob was one of the people that were speculating any sort of injury concerns coming into 2025. And lo and behold, now we have injury concerns with Sean Manaea. But now the Mets are really trying to space out this rotation and get Sean Manaea that extra rest. I still think that the best thing for Sean Manaea, if they somehow call Brandon Sproat up and are able to do so and commit to doing so, is moving Sean Manaea into the bullpen where he will automatically be throwing less innings by default, being a quote-unquote long man, only needing to go 2 or 3 innings and piggyback one of the starters, whether it's Brandon Sproat or somebody else. But it's very evident that the Mets are going to keep him in the rotation for one more turn at the very minimum, but they are still concerned about his overall health and the health of that arm. That's the biggest thing that I take away from entrusting a rookie pitcher and pushing him up to try to give the veteran that you just signed to $20 million plus per year going on regular rest. And that's unfortunate. That's very unfortunate. It makes things very tough from a front office perspective trying to figure out the rotation. And you would think that Brandon Sproat is the automatic option with what he's been doing in the minor leagues as of the past month or two to come in and be that kind of stopgap and maybe the answer if they do want to move Sean Manaea into the bullpen. But if Brandon Sproat's not up here yet, do they have concerns about Brandon Sproat? I know the overall numbers are a little bit elevated because he got off to a really slow start in AAA this season. Are they still committed to having Sean Manaea in this rotation? It's anyone's guess. But I feel like the answers are just plain and simple. And maybe I'm not taking into account something that David Stearns is. And maybe it's not as simple as we're making it out to be. But I think I've seen this answer be thrown around there, from this Mets fan base on social media, is that why don't you just give Brandon Sproat the opportunity if you have concerns about Sean Manaea to end this season and give him that chance? And it seems like the Mets aren't willing to do so. I still think, and I will still stick to this statement, in that I think we're going to see Brandon Sproat in 2025. I think it's inevitable. If Sean Manaea keeps on, slipping and he doesn't get it together, I think that this could be Sean Manaea's. And we said this the last go around, but I think that this go around on Monday in Philly is one of his last opportunities to show that he can be a consistent rotation arm. I think that they're giving him one chance too many, especially the gravity of the situation of where we're at in this season. But if that's the conscious decision before you have to make a decision on Brandon Sproat, then so be it. At the very minimum, I was hoping, as we have Everyday Phillies in the chat here, when could Mets fans see Brandon Sproat get called up? I think we were all hoping as of yesterday it would be for the upcoming Cincinnati series. Then my focus started to shift to the Philly series in Philly to maybe get Brandon Sproat up. But if they're waiting to call Brandon Sproat up, given what Sean Manaea does, I don't even think that we see him for the Philly series. I don't even think we see him for the Phillies series, which I think is a mistake, but that's just how I feel about that right now. Nate's saying that he's been feeling the same way. David Stearns is not as high on Sproat as they are on McLean and Tong. And you know what? You don't really have to be, but that still shouldn't be an excuse for why he's not up here, right? Even if you have concerns about Brandon Sproat, he's shown you a large enough sample size in AAA to, I feel like, at least trust in him to be better than what Senga and Manaea have been for you in this rotation over the past 2 months. Because at a certain point, it's when is enough in the mind of David Stearns, seeing your two veterans go out there and flounder every 5th day or 6th day, rather than see an ERA that's over 4 in AAA, but knowing that in the last 2 months, when your veterans have been bad, that same rookie has been good in AAA, right? Slow start for Brandon Sproat, but over the past month, 2 months, I would say he's really locked it in. Outside of that one-off bullpen outing that he had when the Mets were trying to experiment with that for him, that's, you don't have to be as high on Brandon Sproat, right, as you are with McLean and Tong to realize that he still should be up here. And I think that's just the bottom line. But I don't get paid to make the decisions. Clearly, David Stearns does, and this is the conscious decision that he's making. He's still postseason eligible, by the way, especially if they are going to IL one of these guys. He's still postseason eligible for this Mets team. But you would, as we get further and further into September, I know we're only on the 3rd day of September, but as we get further into this month, the longer we don't see Brandon Sproat, clearly the longer of a shot it's going to be of him getting called up, because you need to get him some MLB experience before the playoffs roll around. You're not going to call him up at the 19th hour of September, give him one start, and expect him to go out there and perform for you when the playoffs come around. So that's why I was hoping, and I think we all were hoping, that instead of having and watching him toss a gem of 7 innings, his last outing in AAA, that outing could have been reserved for his first MLB start, but I think the Mets are just delaying the inevitable. I think they're delaying the inevitable. Again, if you're here, we're just past noon East Coast time. We're about an hour away from game time. We got a matinee matchup here. The Mets are looking for the sweep. Hit those thumbs up, buttons, and subscribe to the channel as well. And keep dropping those live chat comments in the live chat as well. I'm reading all these comments, and there's a lot of opinions on this Mets rotation, and that it's just I don't think that there's a one size fits all answer in most situations, but it just seems like this collective Mets fan base is scratching their heads on why Brandon Sproat is not up. And we'll continue to wonder until we see it. Until the door on 2025 officially closes, which will probably be sometime in late September to call him up. Until that point gets here, I don't really know what to expect anymore. We're going to keep on repeating the same thing over and over again, which I hate to have to do, but if it's necessary, it's necessary. All right, let's get into today's game, though. Casey Mize versus Clay Holmes. This is a big start for Clay Holmes. This is a huge start for Clay Holmes. He has been, I guess, a pillar of inconsistency so far this season, although the overall numbers do look very solid. We don't get much length consistently from Clay Holmes. There's a start that he sprinkles every now and again of 6+ innings of competitive baseball, but for the most part, he's 5.3 innings before you have to really consider putting a bullpen arm in there if you're Carlos Mendoza. And, if that's what he goes out there and produces today, fine. You give me 5 innings. Hopefully the offense gets to Casey Mize and gets to that bullpen and puts up anything similar to what they've been doing the first 2 games of this series, and you call it a sweep. But it would be awesome, at least, to see a little bit more consistency. But as we get further into this season as well, this is what the Mets are facing in their rotation, right? They're facing guys that are either trying to recover from an injury. They don't have, the stamina and the strength to go 6+ innings like we've seen with Sean Manaea and Kodai Senga, and a guy that's also approaching his career high in innings. Actually, I'm not saying he's approaching his career high. He has more than doubled his career high in innings so far this season. And I will get you the official number. I think it's around 140, if I'm not mistaken, for Clay Holmes this season. And given that he was a bullpen piece for the Yankees for the longest time, that only makes sense, right? So he's got a 3.60 ERA this season, 142 1/3 innings pitched. Last 3 years before this, 2022, 2023, 2024, he only went 63 innings in each of those seasons. So this is an uncharted territory for Clay Holmes, which could be the reason why we're seeing a little bit of that fatigue and that inconsistency. But I don't even think so, because I don't want to make that excuse for him, because it's been since the start. It's been the command or lack thereof for Clay Holmes that has ended his outings a little bit early. The walk rate for Clay Holmes is, 9.2%, which is a little bit above league average, but just the efficiency. He's a ground ball pitcher. Strikeout rate is down below league average this season. He's around a little over 18%. So if you don't have those put away pitches, and if you're relying on contact and getting ground balls, you got to put it over the plate for them to hit, and you cannot walk hitters consistently. Far too many times. And this is the key to the game for Clay Holmes if he wants to produce a productive start in today's game, is that you have to limit the free passes. Because I'm sorry, Clay Holmes is a talented pitcher. All of these guys in this rotation have talent. We know that, or else they wouldn't be considered starters for this team that has championship caliber aspirations. But Nolan McLean, I don't think if Clay Holmes did what Nolan McLean did yesterday, starting off the game with 2 walks, 20+ pitches in that opening frame, there's no way that I have confidence in Clay Holmes going 6 to end that outing and retiring, 11, 12, 13, 14 in a row like Nolan McLean did. That's the difference, which is boiled down to just pure talent between Nolan McLean and Clay Holmes. So The key for Clay Holmes is a fast start and limiting the free passes. And I think we've been saying that for this whole season with Clay Holmes. And it's a simple strategy. If you're going to pitch to contact, same thing goes for David Peterson. Two guys that really prioritize contact and getting the ground ball over striking out a plethora of hitters. Not to say they can't strike out hitters at a high clip if they're feeling it on any given day, but in the landscape of this season so far leading up to this point, they haven't been, they haven't posted high rates of a strikeout percentage. So make the defense make a play, or make the hitter make the defense make a play. And speaking of defense, this is the Mets lineup that is going for, that's going right behind Clay Holmes and trying to put together runs against Casey Mize. Francisco Lindor is leading off, playing shortstop. Juan Soto, who has been so good as of recent. I mean, the numbers for Juan Soto over the past month, let alone 2 weeks, are absolutely fantastic. I mean, he is putting up MVP type numbers. He did get snubbed of an All-Star game. Whether he's in actual serious consideration for an MVP, I think he should be. But whether they're actually going to give it to him, is anyone's guess. I would imagine if they snubbed him from the All-Star game, he's not going to be getting an MVP, but he is really turning it on for a team that really needs someone to headline this lineup and continue this offensive production, given what the pitching is giving this team. Alonso, back in that 3 hole. And I think that's a really underrated thing that not many Mets fans talk about, is that this lineup, they started out this season with Juan Soto in the 2 hole and Alonso in the 3 hole. It got to a certain point where the lineup was struggling and Mendoza wanted to switch things up. So he moved Soto down to the 3 hole and he moved Alonso to the 4 hole, right? Down an extra spot and getting somebody else, another bat in that 2 spot to try to get on base for those guys to drive runners in. That didn't really work out as consistently as I was hoping for it to. And then he goes back to the original game plan of Soto and Alonso in the 2 and 3 hole, and they turn it on. Whether that was the actual move that got them going back into those respective spots, or, rather having the season just play out and time playing itself out for them to just heat up, I don't know. But I really think that's where the starting point of better at-bats started to take place, was them going back into those respective positions in this lineup. So that's something to also make note of. And I don't think that we talk about that enough, because there's been a plethora of lineup changes for Carlos Mendoza in this season thus far. And that's one of the things that I've noticed when Soto and Alonso were 3 and 4 versus when they have been in the 2 and 3 spots. And let's not forget, Alonso was off to a red hot start in that 3 hole to begin this season. Even though Juan Soto took a little bit to get going, Alonso was really the one that was kickstarting the offense in that 3 hole to begin the season. And it seems like he's thriving as of recent back in that 3 hole. 33 home runs from your number 3 hitter, 37 home runs from your number 2 hitter. It's just simply amazing production. You'll take that all day long. Brandon Nimmo back playing left field, batting cleanup in the 4 spot. He has really also turned it on, as has Mark Vientos, and they are back-to-back in this lineup again, 4 and 5. Love the top 6 in this lineup if they continue what they're doing, right? I mean, that is a tough 1 through 6 to navigate if you're an opposing pitcher. These guys are getting on base. I mentioned it yesterday in the stream that I did. They're not only beating you with the long ball consistently, what they're doing to begin their scoring, and you saw it in yesterday's game, is that they will accumulate base runners, they'll accumulate hits, they'll move base to base, and then once they take the lead by 1 or 2 or tie up the ball game, whatever it is, whatever situation it is, in the later stages of the ball game is when the big at-bats come out, right? Yesterday, we saw Luis Torrens get things going early with the opposite field 3-run home run. Then you have in the 7th inning, Alonso and Soto, or Soto and Alonso, I should say, going back to back. We see consistent doubles, extra base hits. Like, the Mets lineup can beat a pitcher, whether they're a starting pitcher or a bullpen pitcher, in a multitude of ways. And so I really think that being versatile as a lineup, instead of being just all or nothing with the home run ball like the Phillies usually are, I think that provides a lot more consistent success going into the playoffs, being able to do both. And in turn, that creates a situation where you're able to get pitch counts for opposing pitchers up and eventually out of the ballgame. So Nemo and Vientos are in 4 and 5 spots. McNeil is in the 6th spot playing center field. A lot of people are still scared about Jeff McNeil in center field. I get it. Like, the glove is clearly a downgrade from Tyrone Taylor, who is on the IL as of yesterday. But Cedric Mullins' glove is also a downgrade in center field. I know he made a nice diving grab in one of these games in this series, but Cedric Mullins has been pretty much a zero with the bat as of recent since joining the Mets. The power hasn't been there. He's only hit 1 home run as a New York Met. He's not really putting the ball consistently in the gaps. He's getting some RBIs with some sac flies like we saw yesterday, but the offense in general is not really there with him. And if you're telling me that I can get Jeff McNeil out there in center field, you probably sacrifice some range. This is an infielder trying to play a premier outfield position. It's not ideal. I understand it. But if you're telling me you can get Jeff McNeil's bat in the lineup, still get pretty decent defensive production, and by far get a stronger arm out there in center field over Cedric Mullins, I think that has to be the priority until Tyrone Taylor is able to rejoin this team coming off the IL with that hamstring tightness that he's trying to recover from. So that's just my 2 cents. We've been seeing this DH position also shuffle around. Yesterday it was McNeil at the DH spot, who had 3 hits. He went 3 for 5. Before that, it was Vientos in a DH spot. Now it's Starling Marte. He is batting 7 in this lineup today. Brett Baty and Hayden Senga are rounding things out, 8 and 9 respectively. Brett Baty's playing second base. This is the thing with the infield configuration. Jeff McNeil, I think, is the better second baseman in terms of turning double plays. I think we saw a classic example of this with Brett Baty at second base yesterday, where his turn to Lindor was just slightly off, and that hindered them turning the double play up the middle as the base runner just beat it. I think McNeil's a little bit more fluid at second base with that, which is important to have with McNeil being able to make sure those double plays happen with ground ball pitchers on the mound like Clay Holmes and David Peterson, to be exact. But Brett Baty has a little bit better range at this point. Although, I don't know, it could be close because Jeff McNeil has been playing solid defense at second base as of recent as well. So maybe it's not as big of a discrepancy as I'm making it sound right now. But Brett Baty, I would say, has a little bit more range than Jeff McNeil, maybe just strictly due to the age difference there at that position. But I think in any case, I'll trust either of those guys at second base. Brett Baty has really proved himself defensively this season at third base and second base. But in terms of solidifying the double play aspect of the Mets game, I think McNeil is your better bet at second base. But today it is Brett Baty there. And Hayden Senga is also doing the catching duties. Quite simple. If the Mets offense keeps doing what they're doing, it doesn't really matter who's catching for this team. I know Luis Torrens has had a really good stretch of games with the bat. Like, I looked up the splits yesterday for a lot of guys on the post-game show. Let's do so for Luis Torrens, because since Alvarez went down, he had a runner caught stealing yesterday, and he's doing things with the bat. Overall numbers this season for Torrens are not good because he had an abysmal stretch the first time Alvy went down to AAA. But over his last 7 days, he's got 15 at-bats. He's hitting 400 with over 1,300 OPS. Last 2 weeks, which is comprised of 34 at-bats for Luis Torrens, he's hitting 324 with over 1,000 OPS. In his last 42 at-bats, he's hitting 286 with an 890 OPS. He's getting it done. He's producing runs with the RBIs, in that 8-9 spot, whatever he's entrusted in. He's hitting home runs. I think he's up to 5 home runs this season, but he's had a little bit of a power surge over the past 2 weeks with 3 home runs. He's competent with the bat. And Ken, who cares if Senga doesn't give permission? Every Mets fan should, because you're going to have a guy that's being stubborn, not trying to go down to the minor leagues to get himself right, and is only hindering the team every 5th or 6th day. So and I'm not sure if you're asking just like from that kind of perspective, or, who cares, just do it anyways. I'm not sure if you missed it, but the contract clause, there's a clause in Senga's contract when he first signed with the New York Mets that he has to grant the Mets permission before they can do that. It doesn't matter if he has options. That was a specific clause that was put in. But I don't know if you're asking it from that perspective or which perspective you're asking it from. But from a personality standpoint and a strict decision standpoint, I just hope that he's a team player and does grant that permission to for the Mets to, one, try to do everything possible for him in a lower leverage situation and lower leverage games, but also try to backfill his spot, whether they just go with a 5-man rotation or they get somebody else up here. It's an important decision no matter how you shake it. It's an important decision no matter how you shake it. Let me give you the scouting report on Casey Mize before we head out of here. It's not going to be a lengthy pregame, and I do apologize about that, but it is a matinee. I'm glad to be on here no matter what. Casey Mize Savant. Casey Mize Savant. He is an all-star in 2025, but has really fizzled out. 120 and 2/3 innings pitched. He doesn't walk many hitters, 6.2 walk percentage this season. So he's got command of his pitches. The strikeout rate is a little bit more respectable compared to Clay Holmes, where you have the league average in terms of put away strikeout rate at 22.2%. Casey Mize is just under that at around 21%. And the arsenal of what he possesses here, let's get into that, because that always matters against the Mets lineup, especially underrated thing, by the way. Carlos Mendoza and I think Chavez and whoever else you ask about this lineup and the numbers with the beat reporters, they do a great job breaking this down. There's a stretch of this season where the Mets lineup really struggled, for lack of a better term, to hit fastballs. And as a hitter, anybody who's hit a baseball probably prefers hitting a fastball that's going straight at you than having to deal with any sort of off-speed pitch that is moving in any sort of direction. So fastball success with the lineup is a really good barometer of the lineup's overall success in terms of production, right? And at one point this season, before the Mets really started to turn it on, they were horrendous against the fastball for some reason. Timing of everybody was off. Now, let me see if I can actually get to this statistic on X real quick. Hold on. Mets lineup fastball, maybe. Let me look up. Because there was an updated metric of how they're faring against the fastball as of recent that was very eye-opening because it was a lot different than just a couple of months ago in this season. Let's see, Mets fastball success. I'm not gonna promise that I can probably filter this on Baseball Reference or something like that, but I'm not gonna take the time to do that. All right, anyways. I'll get those numbers maybe for the post game if I can track that down. But anyways, that is the one thing that's different about this Mets lineup and why they're having a lot of success is that they're producing a lot against the fastball, which is ever so important. And a four-seam fastball is exactly what Casey Mize has as his primary pitch. Opposing hitters are hitting 228 off of it, which isn't shabby, right, for him. He throws it for about 95 miles per hour, 34.3% of the time. So he's really going to try to establish that dominance with the fastball and set hitters up for secondary pitches. Now, what does he have for secondary pitches? That's where things have gone wrong for Casey Mize. His secondary pitch that he utilizes the most at 23.8% of the time is his split finger fastball. And opposing hitters are having a really good time off that, hitting 316. Then it's the slurve. Then it's the slider. I think the slider is his best secondary pitch alongside his fastball. So that's the one thing where I think Casey Mize has had a lot of issues with is finding the appropriate and the more dominant secondary pitch to complement the fastball. And that's what we can look out for here in this game from a Mets hitting perspective. So, yeah, I don't really want to talk about the Mets bullpen. I think the Mets bullpen is basically saved. They're rested since game one of this series. I want to say rested, quote unquote, like a loose term here because they've been overworked in general over the past month and a half to 2 months. But in any case, you have with the offense coming to life yesterday, Nolan McLean providing 6 innings, Kevin Herget providing, 2+ innings, and Stanek closing the ball game out. You save a lot of your mainstay bullpen guys. They're going to be available. Clay Holmes, if he goes out there and does what I expect him to do and providing 5.3 innings of whatever production he gives the Mets, this bullpen's going to have another large task at hand against a very pesky, talented, underrated, I would say, Tigers lineup. And that's just going to be the case of this game. So Gregory Soto, you'll probably see Gregory Soto. You'll probably see Tyler Rogers, if I had to guess. And you'll probably see Ryan Helsley, those 3 names, trying to set up Edwin Diaz if this ball game is close. And Ryan Helsley, I stated on the pregame, he doesn't have any choice. He's in a contract year. Whether he doesn't like pitching in New York, whether he doesn't like being a setup guy instead of a closer, doesn't matter. And he shouldn't care about that at this stage of his career if he wants to get the most money as possible this offseason. So he's going to have to live with it. And the Mets need him to figure something out. They need him to figure something out. There's been a lot of talk about Helsley tipping pitches. That could be the case. But I think it's being blown out of proportion. Really. The location, him falling off the mound, him and Stanek have the same issue. They're electric. They throw upwards of triple digits. But they're still having a hard time putting hitters away consistently because they're missing their spots. They're walking a ton of guys. Stanek is very evident. He misses a lot of the time up in the zone. And with Helsley, he usually locates his fastball, but the off-speed location is what really hinders him. And I really do think it's a mechanical issue. Sacrifice a couple of miles per hour in the fastball, I would rather than you continuously walk the ballpark and not know where the pitch is going. And I know it's not as simple as that. I'm never going to claim to be some sort of pitching guru. I know that there's a lot more, stuff involved from a game plan and a biomechanics perspective. I get it. But when I just see guys throwing that hard and they're falling off the mound to the first base side, it's like, do you not start there with trying to figure some stuff out? Now, again, the tipping of pitches is probably an issue. Maybe these hitters do know what Helsley is throwing and what's coming at him or from him at them. But I just think that there's a lot of excuses potentially being made with this whole tipping of pitches rather than focusing on a little bit more of an important issue being the location and the command of the arsenal that they have, at their disposal. So let's look at Helsley real quick before we get out of here. Helsley, Savant page. 9.9% walk rate, not great. Not great whatsoever. The slider, which is supposed to be his predominant pitch, which he does throw at 45%, of the time. Opposing hitters are hitting 133 off of it. It's really the curveball that he cannot, gain a footing of, which is an issue. But even the slider as of recent, I know the overall numbers, especially going back to, his Cardinals days this season, really are holding down the fort on those numbers, with 133 being the batting average from opposing hitters. But, as a Met, it even seems like his bread and butter with the slider has gone away as well. And I attribute it to the inefficiency to fully command that pitch. I really do. It's basically non-competitive when you're talking about the location of that pitch. And forget about it. I mean, the four-seam fastball, this guy's he's averaging 99.4. We know that he can dial it up to 101, 102, 103 on any given occasion. Opposing hitters are hitting 420 off of his four-seam fastball. You're throwing 102, and opposing hitters are still batting at a 420 clip off of your fastball. And it goes back to the point where It doesn't matter how hard you can throw. If you're not hitting your spots, these hitters in this league are that talented and they will handle it. So that's an issue. They have to get his fastball right as well. So, Rob, CP holding it down as always while I'm at work. Yeah, man, we got a post game to gear up for. Hopefully, we're talking about a sweep. Hopefully, we're spamming some W's on the post game as well. Catch us there. For those of you all who are in this stream right now, that's going to do it for the pregame. You'll be redirected over to the postgame. Make sure to smash the thumbs up buttons on this channel. If you missed the postgame yesterday and the pregame yesterday, you can find that using the link below, the description down below. Make sure to go check out all the other Mets content creators as well. I know a couple of people are doing in-game live streams for this game in the afternoon. Metsflix, Pure Adrenaline Sports. Make sure to go subscribe to their channels as well. They do a great job. We hold it down before and after the game while they hold it down during the game. And that's just how it works. So I appreciate it. Let's go Mets. Again, this is a really big opportunity to head into the off day riding high, going into such a crucial stretch of the next 7 games in Cincinnati and Philadelphia. Don't waste this opportunity. I'm thinking and hoping that the Mets offense is able to be up to the task, just like they have been over the past month, and really get behind Clay Holmes to get him some run support. And I think that Clay Holmes can definitely benefit from that. So as always, hit the thumbs up buttons on this stream. Subscribe to the channel. Appreciate everyone that was in the live chat as well. Make sure to follow me over on X, Instagram, TikTok at True Mets Talk or True Mets Talk CP. It's one of those variations of a username. And we will see you all for the post-game stream. Let's go Mets.